Silver Nagati one. It's good to be here with each and every one of you once again as we're coming to you through video, and so we're going to share a few stories here with you today, and I hope you enjoy them. As we were sitting here thinking about some of the stories, some of the things that were coming to me were those that have told me those stories, like my parents, like my grandma and grandpas, and so on and so forth, and brought back a lot of good memories. And so today I want to share some of those stories. This first one was one that my dad told me, and I asked him for many years to share a story with me. You know, when I started back when I was just a teenager, and Dad could never remember one, and it took him almost 10 years, and he finally came to me with this story, and this is the one that he told me. He said a long time ago, as G-Stu the Trickster Rabbit was walking through the woods, he was looking around, enjoying the day, and he happened to look up, and down the trail he saw Waya the wolf. Now we all know that rabbits and wolves don't get along, even today. And so Rabbit thought for his safety that he might better get off the path. And so he took off running through the woods in a different direction. He ran so hard and so fast that his sides began to hurt. I know that each and every one of us have ran that hard before. And as he stopped to take a break, he thought, surely I am far enough away that Waya didn't see me. But just as he began to relax, something or someone tackled him. They began to roll upon the ground, and as they were rolling upon the ground, Rabbit was trying to figure out what was going on. And by the time he figured out what was happening, all he could see were sharp white teeth. All the wolf had him by each ear, and the rabbit said, wait a minute. The wolf pulled the rabbit back. Oh, I said, oh, gee, Stu, hurry up and say what you got to say, because I am hungry. Rabbit said, wait. Let's make a deal here today. And Wolf said, oh, Rabbit, I am so hungry. I've got to eat something. And the rabbit said, wait a minute. Let me see what's going on here. He said, because you don't want to eat me. He said, I'm skin and bones. You're going to choke on my fur. He said, let's see what we can do. And so the wolf put the rabbit down. Now, Rabbit was given a great mind to think through things very quickly. And as he was thinking through things, he asked the wolf. He said, Waya? He said, what is your favorite food? Waya, he began to daydream just a little bit with his eyes closed. He said, oh my goodness. He said, if I could have anything to eat that I wanted, he said, I love turkey. Oh, I love some turkey. The rabbit began to think, turkey. Yeah, I saw 5 white turkeys on the other side of the field as I was coming this way. Okay. Wolf, I will make you this deal. If I can get you a turkey, will you let me go? Why, yeah, he thought about it just a few moments. So as Wolf was thinking about it, he said, okay, Rabbit. He said, if you can get me a turkey, then I will let you go. And so Rabbit, he began to look around, and as he was looking around, he said, this is what we're going to do. He said, we're going to pile all these leaves up right here into a big old pile, and we're going to make a dance ground. He said, and then you're going to climb into that leaf pile. You're going to take your sack with you, and you're going to hide. The wolf, he was very excited as they began to pile those leaves up into a big old pile, and they cleaned the area up and made a dance ground. And then Wolf grabbed his sack, and he waded into that leaf pile and began to hide in those leaves. And before he disappeared, he looked at the rabbit. He said, gee, Stu, is this going to work? Rabbit looked at the wolf with confidence. He said, why, young, this is going to work. You just wait and see. And the wolf disappeared into the leaves, and inside Rabbit was saying, oh my goodness, I hope this works. And so the rabbit, he sat there thinking about things, and he took his drum sat right there and he was thinking of a new song. And as he was thinking of that song, he began to tap his drum. As he was tapping his drum, over the hill came 5 big turkeys. "Oh my goodness," said one of the turkeys. I told the boys, I said, listen, that sounds like Rabbit's drum. Let's go and see if he's got a new song. Let's go and see if he's got a new dance. Rabbit, do you have a new song? Do you have a new dance? Rabbit, he smiled. He said, "Oh yes, I have a new song. I have a new dance." He said, "This is the way that it would go." He said, "I made this dance ground just for you." He said, "When we begin this song," he said, "there's a part there towards the end. When I start to go like this," he said, "you're going to jump up and down with your eyes closed." The turkeys looked at the rabbit and said, "With our eyes closed?" Rabbit said, "Yes, with your eyes closed. This is my dance. If you want to do my dance, then you're going to do it my way." Okay, said the turkeys. And so they gathered around, and Rabbit, he began to sing. "Galageen, he-ya-soo-ya, ding-ya-lee-lee, ding-ya-lee-lee, Galageen, he-ya-soo-ya, ding-ya-lee-lee, ding-ya-lee-lee." All the turkeys, they were having a wonderful time. And as they danced around that dance ground, they were laughing and they were just enjoying themselves. And then, when they got to this part, the turkeys jumped up and down with their eyes closed. Before Rabbit finished the song, "Yee!" the wolf jumped out of the leaf pile, grabbed one of the turkeys by the neck, and shoved him into the sack, and then jumped back into the leaf pile and held up one more finger. The rabbit, he shook his head. He said, "Oh my goodness, that greedy Wayan. Okay, we'll do it again." As the turkeys opened their eyes, they noticed one of their brothers was missing. Rabbit said, "Oh," he said his legs were so tired that he was going to go and he was going to go home and rest, and he would see you then. The turkeys were satisfied with the answer, and they began to dance. Rabbit, he began to sing, and he was singing with all his might. As the turkeys began to dance, enjoying themselves, as Rabbit sang, "Galageen, he-ya-soo-ya, ding-ya-lee-lee, ding-ya-lee-lee, Galageen, he-ya-soo-ya, ding-ya-lee-lee, ding-ya-lee-lee." And they began to dance up and down with their eyes closed. And the wolf jumped out one more time and grabbed the turkey by the neck. But just as he was doing that, the other turkeys opened their eyes and they saw what was going on. And with one step, they took off and disappeared off into the woods. Today, when a turkey sees you, he will do the exact same thing, as he would take off running and disappear off into the woods. Rabbit sat there, and he knew that his day was saved. And as the wolf had 2 turkeys in his sack, he smiled and nodded to the rabbit and took off walking down the path. Rabbit smiled back, relieved that once again he had gotten away from the wolf. All of a sudden, the wolf stopped. And when the wolf stopped, the rabbit tensed up, ready to run. And the wolf turned around, he said, "Gee, Stu, that's a pretty good song, but next time, make it longer." And the rabbit, he began to laugh so hard that he fell off the stump that he was sitting on, knowing that, again, he had gotten away from the wolf. At least that's the story my daddy told me. You know, when I think about these stories, I think about those that have gone on. My dad, my mom, they've been gone almost 4 years now. And a lot of these stories are starting to come back to me, and I'm glad they are. I'm glad they are, because it helps me remember those special times when they share those stories. I've been given stories over the years from various people. I've studied our stories from east to west. And I came across this one, and the unique thing is that most of our stories have songs with them. But over the years, these songs have been lost. The one that Dad gave me, he sang that song, and oh, what a treat it was to know that that song has survived in Pop's head all those years. This next story is about the groundhog and why he has a short tail. You know, this story had a song to it at one time, and I'm still on the hunt for that song. And so there is one of our social dance songs that I use in this place. So if there's anyone that's offended over this, I apologize. But it does fit with the story, and I do it with the utmost respect. And so today I want to share the story of why the groundhog's tail is short. One day, as Groundhog was walking down the path trying to get home, he happened to look up, and when he looked up, there was Wayon, the wolf. Now, Groundhog, he didn't want any trouble that day, and so he thought, I might as well go back just a little ways and maybe find a different way home. And so as he turned around to go back the way he came, there was another wolf. So Rabbit turned to his, excuse me. And so Groundhog turned to his right, and there was another wolf. Groundhog turned to his left, and there was another wolf. All around him, there were 6 wolves. Groundhog didn't know what to do. And so he done what was natural to the groundhog, and he greeted the wolves. Oh, brothers, it is good to see you today. He said, I have often wondered, where are those wolf brothers? It's been a long time since I've seen you. The wolf brothers, they began to surround the groundhog closer and closer. And the groundhog, he started to get nervous. And one of the wolves said, oh, Groundhog, we were thinking about you too. And we were wanting to know if you would come for supper. Groundhog, he was quite relieved because, oh my goodness, they want me to come and eat supper. Groundhog, he patted his belly. He said, oh, gentlemen, he said, I've been eating all day and I'm so full. I just really want to go home and lay down and take a nap. One of the wolves looked at the groundhog and said, oh, Groundhog, you misunderstand me. He said, I meant to say, we want you to be supper. Oh, Groundhog, he swallowed real hard, and he knew that things were going to change. And so he began to think very quickly. He thought to himself, you know, I believe I can trick these wolves. He said, if Rabbit can do it, surely I can. And so the groundhog, he said, I will come and I will be your supper. He said, but you must promise me that you will do one thing for me. The wolves, they were very happy because they were going to get to eat today. And so they looked at the groundhog and they said, Groundhog, what is it? What can we promise you today? Groundhog said, you must allow me to sing my death song before I leave this world. That was a reasonable request, thought the wolves. Because you see, at that time, a warrior always had a death song in his heart. One that he would sing for the very last time, whether it was in battle or whatever it may be. And so Groundhog knew that his life was coming to an end. And so he told the wolves, he said, I must stand in front of this tree right here. As he pointed, and there was a blackjack oak tree. He said, this is good medicine right here. And he said, and so I must stand in front of this tree. He said, I'm going to sing a song, and I want you gentlemen to dance. He said, when you dance, he said, you're going to go out. He said, I'm going to turn you around, and then you dance back. And then one of the wolves got excited. He said, and then we eat. Groundhog said, maybe. And so they stood the groundhog in front of that blackjack tree. And Groundhog took his rattle, and he began to sing. Oh yeah, 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 and the wolves, they enjoyed this dance. They were dancing so hard that they got out so far, and the groundhog, he turned them around. Oh, yeah! And they turned back around and they danced back. When they got finished, Groundhog finished the song. Yay! And just as they were getting ready to jump on the groundhog said, wait, that's only the first one. He said, I must sing 7 in all. The next tree I must go to is that hickory tree way over there. The wolves, they rolled their eyes, and so they picked up the groundhog and took him to the hickory tree, and they stood him beside the hickory tree. And the groundhog, he said, this tree, this is good medicine. He said, this tree is what we make our stick ball sticks out of. This tree provides life for us through our knutsy and many of our other foods. He said, this is a very good tree. And he began to sing the song, and the wolves danced out. The groundhog turned them around, and they danced back, and they finished the song, and they knew they weren't going to eat. And so the wolves said, now which tree? All the way down through the forest they went. And Groundhog was on his very last tree. He said, I need to stand in front of that cedar tree way over there. And they picked him up so that he wouldn't run off. They set him down in front of that cedar tree. And he looked at the wolves. He said, this is good medicine. He said, when our people use this medicine and they smell that smoke, he said, that cleans the spirit. That gives us a new day. Groundhog said, this is the most sacred tree among our people. And this will be my last song. After this one is over, then you can eat me for supper. Oh, the wolves, they were very excited. And so the groundhog, he began to sing the song. And as he began to sing, the wolves danced out. The groundhog, he continued to sing, and the wolves continued to dance. Until the wolves were way out there, further than they had ever been from Groundhog. And all of a sudden, the groundhog turned them around. Oh, yeah! And the wolves turned around to see the groundhog running towards his hole. You see, the whole time, the groundhog had been working his way towards his home. And that cedar tree was one of the closest to his hole, right underneath an old sycamore stump. As the groundhog was running, the wolves turned around and said, there he goes, get him! And they took off running after him. Groundhog used to have a long tail a long time ago. And as he was running, that tail was wagging in the wind. One of the quickest, fastest runners among the wolf brothers jumped out ahead of the pack, and just as the groundhog was diving into his hole, he reached out and latched onto that tail. He jerked that tail up, hoping to pull the groundhog out of the hole, but the tail popped off. Groundhog was safely inside, but without a tail. The groundhog, he could hear at the top the Wolf brothers fighting over that tail, something to gnaw on. And the groundhog, he was happy that he had made it home. They say that whenever you see a groundhog out there, you will see that it still has a short tail. And if that groundhog sees you, that groundhog will take off running, headed for its home, because the groundhog thinks that you're the wolf and you're going to try to catch him and eat him for supper. And if you happen to see where he goes in, they used to say, walk over and sit very quietly. And if you sit very quietly, you might hear inside groundhog singing his song that he sung for the wolves. Oh, yay, hey, oh, yay, hey, oh, yay, hey, oh, yay, hey. At least that's the story that was told to me. Thank you. You know, there are many stories about the animals. And those are the ones that I like to tell the most. And I really like to tell funny stories. The funny stories to me are life. But, you know, as you think about it, all stories, whether they're scary, whether they're travel stories, origin stories, they're all life. But this story was told to me many years ago by an elder lady. And I remember her quite often, especially when I tell this story. And I smile, often wondering, was this a story of her and her sister? I don't dare say anything. I just giggle every time I tell it. But this is my daughter Olivia's favorite. This is The Two Sisters. A long time ago, before there were cars, before there was the hustle and bustle of town traffic, before there was internet or cell phones, there was the simple life of sitting on the front porch, smoking a pipe or chewing tobacco or just sewing or doing something there on the porch, watching to see if visitors were going to come by. That was the case of these two sisters. One was in her 80s and the other was in her 70s. They had never married. And they lived in this old cabin that they had been raised in. Now, when I speak of this old cabin, oftentimes I think of my Grandpa Wilson's cabin, or his house. And I imagine it was much like that, with as soon as you walked through the front door, there was the living room with the bedroom off to the left and the right and the kitchen in the back. With the long front porch there. The two sisters sat there on the porch, rocking back and forth, not saying a word to each other. They were just kind of looking at the yard. You see, a long time ago, among our Cherokee people, they would pull the grass up for so far. We were, and still are, very superstitious people. And so the grass was pulled up just in case something strange ever came into our yard. We would be able to notice it. And so as they were sitting there looking at the yard, admiring their work, the older sister, she got up. And in an angry tone, she said, "Oh, I'm going to go visit the neighbors. You talk too much." She stormed off the porch and down the road, with the younger of the two sitting there, wondering what had just happened. But she sat back and she relaxed and she said, she'll be back later. As she sat there, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her pipe, and she began to smoke on her pipe, and just enjoying the beautiful sunshine. Over to her right, she noticed that there was a small bush. She didn't know why it hadn't been cut down. And so as she sat there, she looked at it, she said, I'm going to have to cut that down. And she leaned forward. Later, she said, she sat back down. As she was beginning to relax, we've all been there. When we don't know what's coming, but it kind of sneaks up on us. That old lady, she began to nod off. And we were at that point where you still know what's going on around you, but you're also floating in that dreamland. And all of a sudden, that sister heard something. Something whistled at her. She got up and she looked around. And her eyes caught that bush. And she thought to herself, little ones, the little people are playing tricks on me. You see, among many in our eastern part of the United States, they're known by many names. But simply put, the little people. They are a small race of people that they said existed here in this world long before we as Cherokee ever came. And they oftentimes play tricks, and they like to giggle and like to laugh. And so that old lady, in her mind, she thought it was the little ones. And she looked at that bush and she said, you little ones, you go away, you just leave me alone. I'm trying to rest. Satisfied with what she had done, she began to relax, and this time she reached into her pocket and pulled out a tobacco plug. She took a bite off of it, sat there. Again, she began to fall asleep. And when her head fell backwards, she was in that place again, and she heard. She jumped up. She looked at that bush and she said, I'm going to take care of you. She stood up and she reached right above the doorway, grabbed her shotgun, a 12-gauge double barrel shotgun. She said, Nick, look, if you don't leave me alone, I'm going to shoot at you. Now, she said that for a reason, because she knew that she wasn't going to hit anything. And so she set the gun down beside her, and she began to relax a little bit, looking down the path, waiting on her sister to come home, because it was getting close to supper time. She began to relax even more, and soon that head fell backwards and she began to drift off into dreamland. And she heard the whistle again. Without even looking, she reached over and grabbed the shotgun, put it up to her shoulder and pointed straight at that bush and pulled both barrels. Boom! And a billow of white smoke came out. And when the smoke cleared, there where the bush stood was the stalk of a tree. She said, come, there. Now you go away, you just leave me alone. She set the gun back beside her, empty now. And she tried to relax. She lit her pipe, and she could feel herself drifting off, and every time she would drift off, she would sit up real quick trying to catch those little ones. But it never happened. And finally she was able to relax, and just as she was beginning to relax, her head fell backwards. As her head fell backwards, she heard, and she jumped up and she pointed at that stall. And she began to laugh. You see, the whole time that she had been blaming that whistle on those little ones behind that bush, she was whistling through her nose. You know, many times we think about these people, and I'm glad that today that you came to be with me, that this was a day of remembrance, that we came to remember those that have shared the stories with me. I'm thankful for each and every person that hears these stories, that maybe these will jog your memory and that you can begin to share stories as well. But until the next time that we see each other again, I'll keep you in prayer, keep me in prayer as we travel these roads. I thank you for everything that you've done, and I wish you well. Travel safe. The Dr. Gohane.